Hey now, what is up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and I am still doing my 31 Days of Horror movie reviews. And I decided to watch a movie that I only recently heard about. I saw a couple of reviews for it, so I decided to add it to the collection, add it to the list. I'm talking about a film called The Front Room. I bet you a lot of people are going to be like, wait, what? Huh? Who is that? What front room? I know it wasn't the biggest movie of the year, and a lot of people did not see this film, but it is a 2024 film, and it's an A24 film, which is something that, like, every time a new A24 film comes out, I'm always curious. I am. I'm always curious. I feel like 7 or 8 times out of 10, I don't like their movies because I think they're too weird or they're too out there or they're too different. And they never quite satisfy my taste. But I've always respected, even still to this day, even after watching this latest film, their willingness to do something different or their willingness to have a movie be different, even if it doesn't satisfy my particular taste. This movie is directed by Max and Sam Eggers. I think this is their very first film, two brothers. And it stars Brandy, who I saw an interview with her where they were sort of touting up the fact that, like, Brandy's returning to horror. Brandy hasn't been in a horror movie since I Still Know What You Did last summer, which was back in 1998, and they tried to make this a big deal of like, wow, Brandy's going back into horror. You know, she used to be this horror icon. I'm like, did she? She did one horror movie. It wasn't that good of a horror movie, if we're being completely honest. The sequel was nowhere near as good as the original. And so I wasn't in particularly craving to see Brandy do another horror movie or return to a horror film. In fact, I can't think of too many movies in general, just movies that Brandy has done since I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. But okay, cool. She's in this film. She plays this character, Belinda, and she's married to this guy, Norman, who she's pregnant by him, and they have this house together. I guess they're sort of struggling, right? Until you find out that Norman's father passes away and his stepmother is in control of the finances of the money. And in order for them to get the money from the will, they have to take care of the mother. And so they move the mother in. And now at first, it's like, okay, the lady's a little weird. She's super ultra mega religious, and she may talk about that a lot, or she may try to bring that in, force those values onto them. Okay, but for the most part, it's like, we can deal with that in order to get this inheritance, right? And then you start to find out that maybe Norman didn't have the best upbringing with her as a stepmother. Maybe she treated him like absolute shit, but he never gets into the details of it. And then you start to see that this stepmother is the stepmother from hell. She does some of the worst things, some of the grossest things, and she just can't be trusted. So Brandy is having to deal with that. Brandy's kind of psychologically getting fucked over here. Now, what I thought of The Front Room was, I'm not going to say I hated this movie. I'm not going to say it was the worst movie of the year. And I'm not going to say that I had the worst time watching it. I just was kind of bored by this movie for the most part. I think there's some decent stuff going on. Like, for example, I thought Brandy was good. You know, for somebody like Brandy, who I know she's been in stuff. I know she like has a TV show that she's done, and I know she's been in movies. I haven't really followed her acting career, not nearly as much as her singing career. So coming into this and seeing her, I thought, okay, she does a good job of doing what she had to do here, and the husband, the boyfriend, Norman, He's played by Andrew Burnap. I mean, he's fine, but I can't say I was all that blown away by him. I can't say that I felt a lot of chemistry and connection between them being a couple. It sort of felt forced, mostly from his part. And they try to set up this whole thing of like, he doesn't visit his father. He doesn't want to go see them. There's a moment where he gets a phone call where he finds out his father's sick, and he's very reserved and very weird about the idea of going to see them. And Brandy's like, well, we should. I mean, if he's sick and he's your father, like, you've never really talked about them, we should go see him. And he's like, no, not interested. And then you leave it at that, and it's like, well, what the hell is going on? I get that they maybe want to have a mystery to it, but the fact that we never really get substantial, concrete evidence of how bad the childhood was, like real evidence of it or real situations. I think the most he says is that he couldn't watch a lot of TV as a kid. I'm like, all right, well, now you're just kind of being a bitch. If there is more to the story, then let's fucking talk about it. And then it's like, well, he's so reserved and so off put on wanting to be around the stepmother, wanting to bring her back with them. He doesn't want to do it, but they need the money, so it's like, okay, fine. Then when the stepmother starts doing stuff and she starts sort of pinning him against Brandy, he starts to question whether or not Brandy is maybe right as a mother or if she's lying about certain things. And it's like, well, if you already don't trust the stepmother, why are you believing her in these cases about Brandy? It doesn't really make sense. It seems sort of forced that they were trying to just create conflict, but it didn't make sense why he was willing to believe the stepmother after everything he had just said. The stepmother is played by Catherine Hunter, who I assume she's probably an actress that has been around and been in a bunch of stuff. And maybe if I had looked up her filmography, I should have done that. Maybe I would have known her from stuff, but I don't really think I'm familiar with her. I will say this. She does a good job at being super annoying, at being this conniving, sort of evil person that just can drive you crazy by a lot of the things that she does. And I understand the whole money aspect of like, well, we have to put up with her bullshit in order to get this inheritance, in order to get this money. But man, I'm not sure I could have put up with all of the shit and sometimes literal shit that this lady puts this couple through. It's fucked up. And it's one of those things where maybe the writers and the directors had this idea of like, man, taking care of an older parent, of a parent that like has lost all of their functions, and sort of like we can twist that into a horror type film, or we can twist that into an uncomfortable movie that makes you feel uncomfortable about a lot of the situations that the mother puts them through, and maybe the feelings that you have having to take care of said parent, and are you a fucked up person if you want something bad to happen to them. Like, I get the idea. I get that maybe that's the emotions that they were trying to provoke, and that's the emotions that they were trying to have us go through. But ultimately, I don't think it works. I don't think it works because I was bored. I was bored for the majority of this movie. I'm not trying to say that you can't have a movie like this where not a lot happens. It's more of just the tension building or more of the awkward building, but I don't think it ultimately satisfies. I think there's a lot of scenes of goofiness, like of the grandmother farting and pissing and shitting on herself, and then you come to find out that she's doing it just to fuck with Brandy. She's doing it just to sort of make a wedge between them, or just to drive Brandy crazy. And I'm like, this is all very silly. This is all very goofy. I'm not in suspense. I'm not all that like scared at all throughout this entire film. I mentioned before, A24, they greenlight and produce movies that you don't necessarily see all the time. So that's why the whole slow burn aspect to it, I can appreciate that it wasn't just the typical, like, hey, maybe the stepmother starts killing people off and it just becomes a silly joke, right? Like, they could have gone a little more dumb. They could have been a little more over the top, and I probably would not have liked that. So I guess I can appreciate the restraint that A24 felt, but I also can't pretend like I wasn't bored. I also can't pretend like I was just sitting here going, can we just get to the fucking point of this movie? And then once you get to the end of the movie, I'm like, all right, is this a waste of time? Like, did I feel like I learned anything or felt anything watching this entire film? I think there's some decent performances and I think there's some decent situations, but ultimately, I think this is a completely passable, skippable film. It's not something that I would really recommend based on anything at all. It's not anything special, it's not anything memorable. I'll probably forget it in like 3 days. I'm gonna give this movie some old bullshit.
That's some old bullshit.
It's the most tame and tepid some old bullshit because I'm not all that angry. I'm just sort of despondent. I'm just sort of meh. That's my feelings after watching it. So guys, let me know in the comments below if you had even heard of The Front Room. What did you think of it? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.
These silent screams became a part of me. I'm moving past that. Please won't you free my soul? Can't hardly breathe in this society. I'm just a madman. Leave misery at home.